Hello, everyone. This is Beverly from Good Food Revolution. And with me today, I have Rachel Martin, who is the co-founder and CEO of Oceano Wines.
Hey, Beverly. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure to meet you over the last few days.
Yes, we've had a wonderful time together. You being here and bringing your wines so that we can try them from Central Coast, San Luis Obispo.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really exciting, I think, for everybody here today.
I think so.
That. Okay, let's get into a couple of questions.
Okay.
So I became familiar with you through your Oceano brand, through those wines, and then started to dig around a bit more about your background. And I think what a lot of people don't know is that you've had like a very lengthy career in wine outside of Oceano, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I want to start with some wine journey questions
Sure.
to put everybody on the same page.
Yeah. Everyone has a different journey.
Right?
Yeah.
So for you, I'm wondering, was wine something you knew you always wanted to be in, or did you catch the bug and have an aha moment?
Yeah, so I never really had an aha moment. Wine was part of my life growing up. My mom worked for a hotel in Southern California, the West and South Coast Plaza, and her boss was a general manager, and she went to all the wine tastings and all of that for the hotel.
Awesome. Yep.
So wine was like part of the home. We didn't have tons of cash, so I think my mom had a box of wine literally in the fridge. And single mom too, and so then I guess I was quite young at that time, and then we moved from California to Virginia. And my mom started dating a gentleman that she later married as my stepfather. And he has an extensive cellar of Bordeaux wine.
That's lovely.
Lovely. And he's been a collector since the 60s. And,
oh my God.
And he's actually from Toronto, so that's very, very cool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so he fell in love with Bordeaux wines, bought futures like in the beginning. And so we would have like these iconic wines at special occasions.
Oh, that would be lovely.
So like, Lafite, Latour, Cheval Blanc, Calon Ségur, like all these amazing wines. And so I learned a lot through those experiences about wine, and he was very proud of his cellar. So he wanted to talk about like the significance of the wines. And so as I grew older, and I think I was around 18, 19 when, of course you become more independent and it wasn't legal to drink, but whatever. So my best friends and I, we would buy wines and taste them and pair them with food.
Love it.
Yeah, without my parents, right? So my friend Lizzie, she was going to school at l'Académie de Cuisine in Bethesda, Maryland, and we were living in DC at the time, and so she would cook and I would buy the wine and we would pair, and so we were interested, like, okay, let's do Cabernet Sauvignon, and I'm gonna buy 3 different wines from 3 different regions.
Love this.
So that's kind of like how I started just to get interested and dabble in it independently. I went to school for fine art photography. So I have a degree in fine arts from the Museum School of Fine Arts in Boston and Tufts University. And then I went into a career as a photographer. And so I continued through a career, and my stepfather at one point, he sold a few family businesses. He and his dad owned the Washington Redskins football team. And when his dad passed away, this team was sold. And so my stepfather, his name is John Cook, he had a dream always to have a winery and a vineyard. And back when he was living in California, he had the opportunity to buy Beaulieu Vineyards.
Okay, I didn't know that. I did not know that.
And he wasn't in the position to do so for whatever reason, and so he always kind of like held on to that desire. So when he retired in 2000, he and my mom were finally married like back in 91. They got married in 91, I'm pretty sure. Something like that.
We'll
Whatever.
fact check after.
Whatever. So they bought a farm in Middleburg, Virginia, which is 50 miles west of DC, 175-acre, gorgeous rolling hills farm. And his dream was to plant a vineyard and build a winery. So in 2001, he asked me if I would run that, business for him that he had dreamed and imagined in his head. And I mean, it was kind of like, it's like, what? Are you serious? Like, yeah, I totally will do that. And he's like, no, Rachel, you just take your time and give it a weekend and then come back to me, because working for family, as he knew personally, is not an easy thing. I'm like, who cares? Like, I want this.
That's awesome.
And so I said, yes, I'd love to accept the position, but I need to be educated. So I know if I'm going to have a job as an executive vice president of a company making wine and growing grapes, I need to understand it, to be educated in it. So I went to Napa Valley College for enology and viticulture. And then I went to the University of Bordeaux School of Enology, which is like,
that's an experience in itself.
For a diploma in sensory evaluation of wine. And I mean, that was all taught in French, and I was not fluent in French.
I was going to ask if you were when you went.
I mean, I had taken a stupid thing to say, but I had taken French in high school. But they don't, like, in college, like in art school, like language isn't really a focus. So while I was in Napa, took not classes, but like private lessons with. She's actually married to the general manager of Dominus in Napa. Yeah, that's kind of how things go in a weird way in wine country. And so I completed my studies in Bordeaux, and by that time it was 2005. So 2001, we sited the vineyard, and then while they were propagating the grapevines, the plant material for our vineyard, which is Bordeaux grapes, starting with red. I was going to school, and then the vineyard was planted in 2004. The winery was completed in 2005. Originally it was 8 acres of vines, and the 5,000 case capacity winery designed by Hugh Noel Jacobson, who's a super, he's passed now, but famous American architect. And the consulting wine person, winemaker, wine educator, winery consultant, I guess you could say, to build the winery. His name is Dr. Richard Vine. And he was, I know, right?
Yeah, it's a perfect name.
And he was the head of the enology department at Purdue University. He's written tons of books about winemaking. And so he was the consultant on that. And in 2005, I finished my studies, and I was like not wanting to leave France at all. I loved, having an apartment in Bordeaux for a year. And the other students in the class, they're like the Lurton family, the Boire family, the Caz family, Cuvelier family, so all these amazing families, and they became, friends. And then I also, because I have an arts background, met a lot of the artists in Bordeaux as well. So I had like 2 friend groups, and it was a really fulfilling experience for me. But then they were like, no, get back here.
Yeah, you have a job waiting for you at home.
And we paid for your education and all that. You better get your butt back here. And so 2005, we finished the winery, and John, my stepdad, had hired our winemaker. His name is Adam McTaggart. He's no longer at Boxwood, but Adam McTaggart's from Toronto, from the area. And he went to Brock University. So it's like really cool.
It's such a Toronto connection happening
thing
here.
Going on. And then I went back to Bordeaux, kept going back just because I kept going back, and met Stefan de Renoncourt and spoke to him about what we were doing at Boxwood. And it convinced him to come and visit to potentially become our consultant. So he visited in 2006, and he's like, the vineyard's super well thought out, designed. Our viticultural consultant is Lucy Morton. She's still there. Stefan is still there. And so he agreed to be our consultant, and Boxwood was the first winery in the United States for Stefan to consult for.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that was our first vintage of wine.
Yeah, that's actually all laid out quite nicely.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to Oceano, but I want to just touch on Middleburg, that AVA, because that's another massive accomplishment, I would say, of yours.
Yeah, yes.
So I know you were the one that started the petition, the process to have the Middleburg AVA with the TTB. What I wanted to ask you was, what was it that you noticed about the wines coming out of Middleburg and the vineyards that made you think it needed to be its own AVA in the first place?
Well, it kind of started out as Boxwood is 100% estate-grown fruit. And in the U.S., if your vineyard is not within an AVA, you can't say estate-grown on the label.
Right.
So that was the impetus for creating the AVA.
Mm-hmm.
But then I worked with soil scientists,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about the soil combinations and then the elevations, and we realized that this area, I mean, it was the closest AVA was the Shenandoah Valley AVA, and then like the Monticello AVA. And the climate is just totally different, and the soils are totally different, and the elevations and the microclimate and all that. So it just, it's kind of course it should be its own AVA. So it's a soil combination. It's clay, sandy, loamy soils on granite between two mountain ranges and an old riverbed.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah, so the Middleburg, Virginia AVA, and I was the sole petitioner on that petition, sole author, and I started it in 2006, submitted it to the TTB in 2008, and then went back and forth with them. It finally went up for public comment, and then was established in 2012.
Wow, that's such a process.
Yeah, it was super so it's the climate, it's the geology, it's the rainfall, the wind speed, it's the history of the area. Why Middleburg? Because Middleburg is a town within the AVA, but why call it the whole AVA Middleburg when the town is just part of it? It's because it's so much history in that area of Middleburg. It was the halfway point between Arlington and Winchester, and at that time it was very important in the Revolutionary time, and it was the halfway stop. So they would spend the night.
Right.
And Middleburg's, it was the midway point.
Gotcha.
And there's a hotel, an inn there called the Red Fox Inn, and George Washington stayed there among many of his old school cats. Stayed there, and it's still operating today. I believe it's one of the longest operating businesses in the country.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So now we're going to go to Oceano. We're going to travel across the United States, the other side.
Not right. Not because it was next door.
No.
Or anything.
So you leave Virginia, head to California, and start making wine. How did that happen?
Yeah. So Middleburg has a film festival called the Middleburg Film Festival. In the beginning, I was on the board, and for the VIP dinner for the opening film, I was seated across the table randomly from a stranger. I didn't know who he was. His name's Kurt Deutsch, and we started talking, and we were like, just clicked, right? And he's like, oh, my movie is airing, like it's the opening night film. I was like, oh, okay. It's like, will you come and watch it with me? So I said, sure. And then we started dating, and we eventually got married.
Right.
So Kurt is from St. Louis. He lives in New York City. So do I. We got married. And so his dad's neighbor and very close friend, Henry Warshaw in St. Louis, owns Spanish Springs Vineyard. So owns this vineyard that I'm now sourcing all of my, created a brand around. And Kurt had just nonchalantly said to me, oh, you have a vineyard. My dad's friend grows grapes. You should make wine from there. And I was like, who are you? You don't know anything about winemaking or grape growing. I don't know where this vineyard is. It could be absolutely anywhere. So then when I eventually met Henry, Henry told me more about the vineyard and asked me if I would come and visit and what I thought about building a winery there. So I was kind of going to give him my 2 cents. And I'm very adventurous in spirit, and I was just excited to see something new. And I studied the climate and the soils before going, of course, and I sent the data over to Lucy Morton, who is our viticultural consultant. And so I flew out there and I fell in love with the vineyard. A mile and a half from the ocean, Spanish Springs Vineyard, planted in 2007, 94 acres. It is planted into a canyon, so it has these rolling, like hillsides within it. So 30 to about 300 feet elevation, mostly eastern facing slopes. It's so close to the vineyard and below the fog line that you have the fog that comes over this small mountain range called the Pismo Preserve that really acts as a buffer from the inclement weather. Anyway, lots of, I'm very passionate about it.
And I love that. And I could tell after, spending time with you over the past couple of days that you are completely passionate about your project.
Yes, I am. So I just immediately wanted to contract for grapes. So I said, Henry, I need 6 tons of Chardonnay. And there's multiple clones of each variety, 8 varieties grown there. So these are the clones. And then I went back to Virginia and I was like, oh my God, I called Kurt, obviously. And I was like, hey, Kurt, would you want to get in the wine business with me? And he's like, love struck, and he's like, ooh, boy, yeah, I want to do that. That sounds romantic, So Kurt co-founded Oceano Wines with me. He's actually the one that came up with the name Oceano.
Oh, right.
Oceano is a beach town, is a city, and it's one of the original 5 cities of the area. And then the proximity to the ocean.
Well, that's what I found. Like, she must have called it Oceano because of the proximity to the ocean. But
and because it's like in multiple languages, it's ocean, and I like that. I like to be able to connect with as many international people as possible. So then I was like, let's do this, and then I told my consultant Lucy, it's like, I don't know where I'm going to make the wine. I don't know who's going to make. I live in Virginia. I'm running this winery. And so she introduced me to Marbu Mark, who became our consulting winemaker. And so Marbu and I met at the vineyard, and we tasted through as many Chardonnays as we could get our hands on. And he just wanted to understand my palate so that we had like a language that we could speak and understand each other and what I was looking for. Because when I first went to Spanish Springs, in my mind and in my imagination, I could taste the wines that we were going to make.
Right.
And so Marby was like, I'm in, I love it. And then we looked around for a winery to make the wines close to the vineyard, but we couldn't really decide on anything. So to begin, we felt that Marbu should be the one tasting and touching the wines during the winemaking process and not have him simply as a consultant, but also as a winemaker.
Right.
He's based in Napa. And so we brought our grapes up to Napa for him to process and make the wines. And so we started 16 with only Chardonnay, 17 only Chardonnay. And then we finally added Pinot Noir in 2018. And now we're making the wine in Paso Robles. Right. And Marbu is no longer consulting for us. And so I'm basically consulting for myself. I'm doing it myself. I know exactly what I want, how I want that, and how to get it done. Yeah. And so I've hired an assistant winemaker. Her name is Marin Walgamot, and she's at Pacific Wine Services. So that's where we're making our wines.
Gotcha. You said something very interesting, and I heard you say this before on the weekend, that you can taste the wine that you're going to make from those grapes. And what is it that gives you that feel or that inclination?